Hello, this is Gary.
Hi, Gary. It's Deborah Bonham.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Oh,
I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing real good. It's good to hear you and talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to have a chat.
Well, first of all, I know y'all got a brand new album coming out and
Yeah,
of
we have.
covers. Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Uh, yeah, sure. It comes out on April the 29th. Um, and yeah, I'm really excited because it's the first time that we've done a joint project. It's always been Deborah Bonham Band or Deborah Bonham, and this time it's now Bonham Bullick, and it's which incorporates Pete, and it's a new project and of doing sort of some obscure and some well-known covers, blues covers, and putting our own take on them with as much respect as we could for the originals. And it was a real huge challenge to get it right, and it's the first time I've produced a record totally on my own, so there was quite a lot of weight on my shoulders,
Yeah, right.
to make sure I got it right and paid the proper respect that those great songs needed, but making them our own, because you can't just copy them. But
Right, right.
yeah, so it's great, and I'm really excited about the whole album coming out, and because we've been in the pandemic and lockdown, and now all of a sudden it's opening up, and
Right.
come on, let's get going,
Right. Yeah, I bet you're excited to go out there and play some. Well, so
Oh
yeah,
gosh, we did our first two shows in January, and honestly, we were like, it was like we were coming out the traps,
yeah,
We just got on that stage, and it was, well, hey, we're out here, and it was
right,
just brilliant, and the crowd were the same.
right.
It was like, I think everybody's been, you know, locked up and struggling, and then all of a sudden everyone was just absolutely going crazy,
Sure.
and there was no breakout. It wasn't there was no breakout of COVID at this event, so it was excellent. Really, really was good.
That's awesome.
So yeah, can't wait to get going. We start touring the UK and Europe in April, and this in the summer. We haven't at the moment. We're seeing how things are working in America, and hopefully, this dreaded pandemic will start to ease out, and we can
Yes.
get there for the end of the year or spring next year.
Sure.
We're just
Yeah.
sort of seeing how it is at the minute.
Well, why did you decide to do a covers album of all these cool songs? I mean, these are awesome, songs that you've done. But why did you decide to do that at this time?
Um, I think because people have always sort of said to me, you really should do a blues covers album. From way back when, there was talk years and years ago by one record label. They were sort of saying, oh, you really should do a Lady Sings the Blues album. And I thought, I can't do that. I didn't grow up like Billie Holiday did,
Right. Right.
It's a whole different world for me, and I felt really nervous about taking that on, to give it the absolute respect it needed. So I've always shied away from doing that, really, and I've always loved songwriting, so that's always been the way I've gone. But now, I'm older, and I just felt that I could tackle some of this now, but I didn't want to do the obvious stuff. I still wanted it to be in the genre of how I write, really,
Right.
with deep respect to the blues, but not just being totally blues, bringing in some other influences as well, of rock and soul and all the things that I've grown up on, So, and so I just decided to do it this time. I talked to Pete about it. Our guitarist and my husband, Pete Bullick, and we've been in a band together for 30 years. So it was just time, It just felt,
Right.
yeah, let's do this. And there was some of those songs were just so cool. You know, I wanted to just give them a go and see where it went, and it went great. So yeah, it just felt like the time was right.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to the songs, and in your voice now. And some people hear the name Bonham, they go to Led Zeppelin, but you've got your own style, and you stand out on your own. And your voice, I was thinking,
thank you.
Well, your voice, you got this Janis Joplin meets Ann Wilson thing going on. Am I right about that? But
well, that's high praise. Thank you very much. That's lovely of you. Both women, of course, I adore. So, that's real high praise. And I had the absolute fortune to be on tour. That was the last time when we were in America in 2018. It wasn't the last time we toured America. That was 2019. But in 2018, we did the Stars Align tour with Paul Rodgers, Jeff Beck, and Ann Wilson.
Wow.
And Ann would sit at the side of the stage, towards the end of my show and watch me. And honestly, I was really goo-goo gaga every time I looked at her. I tried to speak to her, and I just couldn't find the words. What do you say to someone like Ann Wilson?
Right.
It was really, and I'm having to sing in front of her, and I'm like, oh my giddy aunt, I had to really up my game.
Right. Well,
but she was just so generous of spirit, she really was. She was so lovely to me. So it was, and her whole band were just amazing. So yeah, it was great. In fact, one of her bass player is on one of the tracks on the album, awesome. Andy Stoller.
Cool.
He's the Hearts bass player and in Anne's solo band also, and Nancy's. So he ended up playing on our album. So it was great.
Right. Well, don't you have Robert Plant appearing on this album too?
No, Robert did harmonica on my last album.
Oh, okay, it was the last album.
Yeah, he was actually. You know what he said to me? When you do this new album, I'll do something on it with you. But then COVID hit, and so it just we could never get the time together then. And to be honest, it's great, and at some point it would just be my greatest thing to be able to sing something with him. It would just be perfect.
Right.
But again, the time has to be right. I'm still in the process of proving myself and our band at the moment. That's how I see it,
Right. Right.
So it's great. And as you say, people hear the name, and of course it's John and Led Zeppelin, which I'm extremely proud of. And Rob, I'm very, very close to Robert. He's like a brother to me, really. When I decided to get into the music business, I made a decision to do it my way, really, because otherwise I didn't really want to be on the back of Zeppelin. It's just it wouldn't have been right. And it sets the bar quite high. When you grow up with Led Zeppelin, you've got to make sure you're good enough to carry that name, because there's no point going out and being rubbish and being John Bonham's sister.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I know, when you were a kid, though, it's not like, maybe all the other kids were listening to Led Zeppelin, but your brother is in Led Zeppelin, so it's a little different world. So, but who were your influences when you were younger? And I guess, of course, Led Zeppelin was one of those, but who were your influences? Well,
all things started with Led Zeppelin, because I was 6 when John joined them. So, and I saw them when I was 7. And that was the moment for me where my world changed, completely. Just sitting, watching my brother and this band, it was like an out-of-body experience. That's the only way I can explain it, because they were like this otherworldly figures up there. It was incredible, and the music was just so amazing. So yeah, it all started there. But as I was growing up, John had such an eclectic mix of music, and my other brother Michael did too. They were real Motown guys as well, and soul music, and blues and West Coast music, and it was such a mix. And my mom and dad were into their music as well. They loved the big bands, they loved the blues. My dad particularly loved Billie Holiday and Sarah Vaughan and all of that. So, I grew up listening to this whole mix of everything. So, influences really, it all started with Led Zeppelin, and then so many others, Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin and Etta James and then, Janis and, so many bands that I could name, Little Feat. I'm a big Little Feat fan. Cool. And of course, Free, Paul Rodgers, right. Bad Company, they signed to Led Zeppelin's Swan Song label. So, I was a very big Bad Company fan.
Oh, me too.
And then I discovered Free. So, and now, of course, Pete will talk to you about that because he's a huge Free fan. Right. So, yeah, there was just so much, there was so much fantastic music around me all the time that it was a privilege, there were so many influences. I wouldn't know where to start, really. Fleetwood Mac and Heart, right. So many bands. I love Creedence, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and
yes.
I absolutely love John Fogerty, his
right.
voice.
Right.
So loads of them.
So when you were younger and your brother's in Led Zeppelin, and you decided you wanted to sing and things like that. So I was reading about, I guess you got up with his son Jason and played a little bit. How did that start?
Yeah. Well, while John was alive, I didn't really do much because I was at school. I was just 18 when he passed away, right. So I was still actually at school. And he didn't want me to become be in a band and go into this industry. And at the time, so I remember telling him when I was about 16, this is what I want to do, and he was like, "No, you've got to stay on at school. You've got to do this." I think he wanted me to be a vet or something because I have a massive love for animals and always have done. He really didn't think that his kid sister should be in that industry, and I get that now. It was a difficult place for women back then, and it was. He saw a side to the industry as well that was probably not great, and he just I totally understand. But of course, you've got to go where your heart is, and it was always in me, that I wanted to perform and sing, and so I did follow that road, and it's been a hard road, it's not been an easy road at all, but it's got to a point now where I feel really comfortable. I think as the years have gone on and you get older and you start to realize things and understand things, and it's opened up a lot more for women, somebody I held in huge esteem was Maggie Bell. Mm-hmm. She was huge over here in the UK. I don't know whether she actually made it over to America, but she was our sort of version of Janis Joplin, really, but very soul-y as well. Right. And she was signed to the Led Zeppelin Swan Song label. And, I've had long talks with her about just how hard it was back then for women to break through. It was very much a man's world. But that has opened up, and thank goodness for that, because there's so many of the great singers, Dusty Springfield, Elkie Brooks, and all the wonderful Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie, right. They're trailblazers, and it's great that it has opened up now. So I was always going to do it, and Jason, he was always playing drums from when he was little, I think he was playing drums before he could walk, really. Wow. So we decided to do some demos. So we rang up Robert, who had a small studio in his barn, because this was pre, all the technology we have today. Right. And we went and did some some demos, which was great, you know. And then we've done. He did all the drums on except one track, which was Mick Fleetwood, which was amazing having him on my album. So Jason did all the drums on the old Hyde album that I did.
Awesome.
So yeah, we've toured together. We've done a lot of things together.
Awesome. You've been playing for years, and you've got your husband with you that's a guitar player. So how long have y'all been playing together?
Pete and I, about 30 years.
Wow.
I mean, it's been a long time. We met 31 years ago at a friend's wedding. He knew the bride, and I knew the groom, and we met at this wedding. And he had a band that did the music as a wedding gift to the couple. So his band was playing. Now, I can tell you that his band was playing all the songs that your band plays, because we had a look at you on your Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
And we were going, crikey, this is the list that Pete was playing.
Wow.
Tom Petty, you know,
right.
all of that, and Creedence and everybody.
Sure.
All the list of, I want to come and see your band with everything that you play. We love.
Hey, please. Now talk about.
And when we come to Alabama, we're definitely going to come and see you.
Hey, please.
So yeah,
please
he was playing the band, and they asked me to get up, so I got up with his band, and that was it. We sort of met, and then that was it, and we've never been apart since.
Wow. So I guess
it's been a long time.
Worked out pretty good for you. Then it sounds like That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people could say that. I mean, I could say that I would have got out of jail quicker. You know, I've done more time with Pete than I would have done. If I'd done something bad, which I don't tend to do. So, no, it's been great. But we have, I mean, 31 years. It's a long time, and because we're together 24/7, I guess it's like most couples, we would have been married 70 years or something, because we've never been apart. So it's amazing that we're able to do that, and it's good. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's brilliant.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have a lot of creative ideas together. I mean, when you spend all that time together, it kind of helps to bounce off of each other as far as musically. You can, you know, have new songs.
And you know. I know he's sitting here, and I'll pass you on to him to have a chat when you're ready, but
sure.
He is one of the finest guitarists ever. And I think that's because I couldn't see him when I was stood at the back of this room, but I could hear him play. And I was with a friend of mine, and I said, who the heck's that on the guitar? You know, he just played one note, and his vibrato on it and his feel, it just got me. So... yeah, he's saying he's learned a second note now, so you know he's doing well.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, he is. So it works because we have mutual respect for each other's talent. So it works.
Well, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I can talk to him if he's ready to talk a little bit.
Yeah, here he is. I'm going to pass him on.
All right.
Here you are, Pete.
Hello, Gary. Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you. I've been a treat talking to your wife and talking about the music, and I guess you're a big Paul Rodgers fan, she said. So, right?
Yes. So that was that was kind of an idyllic job for me, really.
Oh man! So how does that feel to be playing with all these guys, you know, that you always admired, and you're like, I get to jam with them, you know, and we get to play together.
Well, if I ask you, how would you feel playing with one of your heroes?
Right.
And just do you imagine that feeling? And then that's exactly how I feel, because I'm a fan.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had a chance to play you yet, but we saw your set list and we had a good laugh, because that was like the soundtrack to our life.
That's true. See that my influences are the same influences, and then. I mean, talking, you know, I get a chance to talk to all these people that I grew up listening to, you know, and I get to interview them, and I'm thinking, man, it's just a treat for me just to talk to y'all, you know, people like y'all. But, well, how excited are you about the new album?
Well, it's great. I tell you what, it's because we've done a bunch of albums where we've all like co-written them. You know, Debbie mainly brings the song nearly finished to us, to the band, and then we stick our bit in there. You know, whether I create a riff or do the solos or whatever, but we sort of finish the songs off. That's it. That I didn't realize that would seem easier than doing this kind of cover version album, because this cover version wasn't exactly a cover version album. We've got to try and make the songs sound different to the original,
right?
And we got to make them sound cool as well. But
sure.
But also they're songs that sounded cool already, so it's very you don't want to make them worse,
right?
And you don't want to say you made them better, because they're already as good as they can get, a lot of them. So you got to try and do some sideways step, don't you?
Well, you know what I'm thinking is maybe some of the younger generation, they haven't heard those songs, so you get to introduce those songs to them in your way. Then they can go back and listen to the originals and say, hey, they did a good job. They did a cool job of their own version. Of course, you don't want to copy. That's right.
Yeah, but I'm telling you what, you know, when we first went into the studio, we'd been listening to the originals, and of course we all start up just jamming them, but we're jamming them as how they were done. So that was no use.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. That was easy. Let's go.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you got to do. Well, so this album was recorded. Where was it recorded? I was reading about it. That
great studio down the road from where we live, and it's called the Old Chapel Studios, and it's in a village called Nutbourne.
Okay.
And as it's a chapel, it's like a church house.
Cool.
And it's right opposite a pub, which is like a gin house. And down the road is a school, so there's a schoolhouse. So
wow.
It's completely Nutbourne city limits, we call it.
Wow.
Church house, schoolhouse, gin house, outhouse. Yeah.
All the houses. How was it? How fun was it to record in the processes and things like that?
Well, it was great because we record initially all together. We have a few days in the rehearsal studio, sort of knocking them into shape, and that gets tough because it just takes one person to say, "Can we go to the pub?" And then
right.
And then that sort of ruins the rest of the day's rehearsal because
say, oh, it's over. Let's go. Yeah, right. Well, how did you get started playing guitar and things like that?
I was really young, about 6 or 7 years old. I got my first guitar, but that was because I had an uncle, my mum's little brother, who's only 3 years older than me. So he got his first guitar aged about 8 or 9. And of course, immediately I wanted everything that he had, so I had to get a guitar the next year, and that kind of thing. So he was busy trying to work out songs, and then he'd have to teach me them, and we'd just keep playing the records, lifting the needle up, dropping it back on the record again, and copying what we heard, on songs that we liked. And back then, the songs that we were listening to were usually either his older sister's records or my mum's or babysitters, which would range from the Beatles, the Tremolos, Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison,
right,
Duane Eddy, and then sort of into the Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green era.
Right.
And then my aunt was a big Free fan and Bad Company, so that's how I got well into that. We got caught up in the kind of the guitar playing of Paul Kossoff because of the vibrato thing. We got really kind of hooked on that at a really early age,
right? And
we'd try and out vibrato each other.
Yeah, well that's cool. I mean that's
it was just something we got hooked on as like 9 or 10 year olds. So
yeah,
and then Leonard. Well, you're in Alabama, aren't you? Well, Leonard Skynyrd.
Oh yeah, sure.
Hit the screens in Ireland, where I was on a program called the Old Grey Whistle Test in about '76, and of course they showed the outdoor Nebworth Freebird,
right,
which just knocked our socks off again as well,
sure,
because that was almost like 3 guitarists in one band playing like all our heroes.
Crazy. It's crazy.
So
Yeah.
it was yeah. I think if any kid wanted to be in a band at that point in time, it was Leonard Skynyrd.
Sure.
Yeah, we'd be saying, "Oh, they got 3 guitars. I wonder if they need another 2.
They might need 2 more. It's just
it's
crazy. Yeah.
Wonder if
That's
I write to them. Yeah.
right. You never know. They might just. I always drop hints. I'm just saying. I always. I mean, and I will take y'all up on the offer to jam out or something. You come to Alabama, I'm there. I'm just saying, we'll jam.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Well, so you got to tell me that you liked Led Zeppelin too, right?
Yep. But funny enough, Led Zeppelin weren't the top of my list. They're top of most people's lists. Free and Bad Company.
Free was Bad Company. Two different styles. I mean, 2 awesome styles, but 2 different styles. So, but both you can understand why people are fans of them. But they're cool too.
Yeah. Funny enough, because at the age I was, when Led Zeppelin came out, I was only 4 or 5 years old, so I wasn't probably. I didn't get into it maybe till I was about 13 or 14.
Right.
And I guess that might have been just because my babysitters or my parents or aunts didn't have those records. It could have gone a different path had they played me Led Zeppelin age 7 years old. So
right.
Maybe that's the kind of thing. But as well as that, when we were kids, a record, to buy a record, I mean, it's quite a lot of money for us as kids. So you had to have, and save up for a guitar. So you had to, have a Saturday job or a morning job. We have things called paper rounds where you used to go out and stick papers in. Oh, you have
paper routes. Sure.
US as well.
Sure.
Yeah. So you'd have to do all these sort of things to buy your record collection and buy your guitars and stuff. So So not everybody could afford all their favorite records. You had to share amongst your friends at school.
That's right.
You had to. So one guy had the free records, one guy had the Zeppelin records, and you do a little swap for a week or 2, and then.
Right.
And the Deep Purple records, that was another big one. And
sure.
And then Rush entered the scene as well. So.
And what was your first guitar that you ever played?
First guitar was an electric guitar. Well, the first guitar was actually a catalog acoustic guitar that was about $5, and that was rubbish. About a year later, I got an electric guitar from like a supermarket, almost like a Walmart own brand guitar,
right.
And that was about $30 worth, and that was terrible. But I had that for about 2 years before I was saving up to get something quite reasonably decent. And I think the next one was. The next one I think was a Stratocaster copy.
Oh, okay.
Which at this point I'd discovered Bacardi and Ritchie Blackmore and Jimi Hendrix.
Oh yeah.
So I think we were about 13, and we had pinched a bottle of Bacardi from one of the bandmates' parents, and we had this gig at the church, and we drank the bottle between 3 of us.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. We totally lost control, and I got carried away and set fire to this guitar that I'd saved up. And then I smashed it. And so that was 3 years of savings down the drain.
Oh, geez.
On my first experience of Bacardi.
Well, it sounds... Jimi Hendrix burned a few guitars. I mean, that's the influence was really strong. But
yeah, that was it. I got a bit carried away. I think in the set we had Deep Purple, Smoking the Water, and Jimi Hendrix, Hey Joe. So I took it too far.
Yeah, right. Well,
and the thing was, you think you would entertain the audience, but the audience were playing badminton in front of the stage and totally ignored us.
Wow, that's I guess what to each his own. I guess, but yeah. Some relaxing music while you play badminton. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
but then we discovered at the music shop they offered me where I paid every week for the guitar. I got a guitar and what they call the on credit.
Yeah.
So I got a Saturday job that paid £7 a week, or £7 on a Saturday, and that's about $10. and the guitar shop charged me £5 a week for the guitar for 3 years, I think it was.
When you were younger, though, and you heard all your favorites, kind of like you heard Free or Bad Company or something like that, when you had the guitar, did you think, I want to sound like that? And suddenly, did you think that you were going to sound like that instantly? I mean, I always had this, I was impatient and I wanted it to sound like that. I think I got a guitar from Sears and it sounded crappy, and it didn't sound like Van Halen. It sounded like Van Crappin'. It didn't sound good. So when did you realize that I have to get this effect and I got to get this amp and I got to get all this? Did you realize all that all of a sudden?
I think I was about 14, I think, when I got my first Marshall, and that was a bit of luck. Again, it was an old second-hand Marshall, so this would have been about 77, 1978 maybe, and the amp that the Marshall had, it was a 100-watt head, and it was from 1969, and it was in this electronics store opposite my school, and it didn't really do musical instruments, it just did electrical anything.
Right.
And they had this amplifier head, Marshall amplifier head in, and it was the 100-watt bass head. So it was and the bass heads sold for about half the price of the guitar heads. Of course, everybody wanted Marshall guitar heads,
right?
And the bass heads weren't quite so popular secondhand. So this was £90, $120 bucks. So I borrowed some money and got this. But the guy in the electric store told me a little trick, and he did it for me in the shop. He says, you do know the only difference in the bass head and the guitar head? And no, so it's just this little resistor here. So he opened the back of the Marshall, and he did a little rewire of it and said, there you go. Although it's called a Super Bass 100, it's actually now the same as a 100-watt Plexi.
Wow.
So I had a budget for, well, it was the same cool amp, but for a fraction of the cost. And of course, not being able to afford what you wanted, you had to make all these kind of, sacrifices and modifications. But much later on in life, I found out so many people did that. Even Paul Kossoff had Super Bass 100-watt lead heads.
Wow.
With this conversion on them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of known, all those boys from the 60s and 70s, they did all those modifications back then. But I only found out by accident in Belfast just because I couldn't afford the real one.
Wow. That's a cool story. So how did you start playing in bands and things like that? What got you into that?
Well, we had, so myself and my uncle would be playing together, and then, of course, he was at a different school, a bit older than me, so, and then he left and had a whole bunch of friends playing bands. They'd get me to, I would occasionally play drums or bass for them, because my uncle was a lead guitarist, so there wasn't room for me to be lead guitar. So I'd play drums or bass, but then I'd go back to my school and get a bunch of kids in my class or the class. It was usually the classes a year or two above me that I found other musicians, because anybody my age was probably too young to learn, whereas I'd learned really early.
Right.
So I was playing with a load of older kids and stuff, so we'd form our own bands. And then we'd play what was called the school disco once a year or a couple of times a year. Cool. So that would be, because that would be about 14 years old, 15 years old, so 78, 79, and punk had come in. We were doing a right mixture of songs. We were doing Hendrix, Free, Deep Purple, Boomtown Rats, Ramones. We did 2 Ramones songs.
Oh, cool.
Sex Pistols and Black Sabbath. You're just not supposed to mix all those songs up in one concert, are you?
If they're not playing badminton in the front, you could probably get by with some stuff. Yeah, but they're playing. Yeah, what do they play? Yeah. So how fun was that though? When you're progressing, you're seeing more and more. You're playing for people, and you get excited about all that, right? For your gigs. So
it was just the best. And then the other thing was it became easy to get girlfriends.
Right. That's it. Get the guitar.
I noticed that people at schools were quite sports orientated.
Yeah.
So that of course, you've got your American football, baseball, and stuff, and hockey. But over
Sure.
in Ireland, ours was, and it was either cricket or rugby or something like that.
Right.
And I was rubbish at both, and I could see the guys that were really good at rugby and really good at cricket. They'd get the girlfriends from the other schools, and if you're rubbish at sports, you didn't get the girlfriends. So what I noticed was, if you played guitar in a band,
that's it,
and you were crap at sports, you could get a girlfriend.
That's it. Or you could wear a rugby shirt and play guitar and do 2 for 1 or something. I don't
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't know. Yeah, I think that seems to work. Unless you smell like real bad.
Yeah.
It helps to bathe. I'm just saying. Yeah. But
yeah.
Well, so how did you progress into where you are now? How did you get to that point in your band?
Well, I sort of moved over to London when I was about 21, and sort of accidentally fell into a couple of bands, and then ended up in one of the biggest, well, not big, but one of the busiest bar bands, I suppose you'd call them. We'd play clubs like the Marquee Club, which is a famous club, but a lot of other clubs of the same sort of size, and bars that would have music rooms. So, a couple of hundred people a night kind of size.
Cool.
For about 4 years.
Yeah.
And it became pretty well known on the circuit. So, but we'd be playing 5-6 times a night, or 5-6 times a week.
Wow.
So you really got your chops going. Well, it was, it was second nature playing. By the time I started getting into other bands and stuff, and asked to do stuff, and so that was sort of it. And then meeting Deborah, we sort of kicked it up a level when we got together as a band and started doing original stuff, and then some of our peers, we'd get maybe support slots with, well, for instance, Paul Rodgers and Foreigner and stuff like that. So people would start noticing you, and a few doors would open, and a bit of luck sets in, and opportunity, and all that kind of thing. And I guess a big chunk of it is actually like animal welfare. I mean, Deborah rescues a lot of animals, and Paul Rodgers' wife does as well. So we had this sort of thing in common. So we started so we all joined together to do some concerts for rescued horses and rescued dogs and all sorts of stuff. So it sort of then organically started growing out of a friendship and a common bond for, I don't know, love of animals of all sorts. So it wasn't just all about who's the best player. It was about, if you can play decent and you got a decent heart, well,
hey,
it all sort of came together.
That's awesome. Oh, so playing with Paul Rodgers, I mean, have you thought about recording some music with him?
As far as recorded, we did a live concert album at the Royal Albert Hall in London, which was the last date of our UK tour in 2017. And that came out that was called Free Spirit Live at the Royal Albert Hall. And we did CD, DVD, Blu-ray, and a triple vinyl set of that, which charted in Billboard #2.
Awesome. In
the Billboard video charts, I think.
Cool.
And so it did pretty well. So that was the only recording I did with him. So it was live concert DVD and audio. And so we haven't written any new music and done it together.
Have you got some music that you're working on? I know you got the album out, coming out in April. But do you have some more original songs that you're going to be doing? Yeah,
we've we're kind of, because this album was sort of ready, I don't know, over a year ago. So we'd normally be ready to be doing another album by now. But because of all the sort of shitstorm that happened over the last couple of years, everything got put back and delayed and stuff. So yeah, we've got the beginnings of another album. So once we sort of toured this one a bit, we'll be right back in there with a new one. We'll probably do back to our originals for the next one, and I think from this Bonham Bullick album with all the covers, I think we'll probably pick up a lot of suggestions and ideas along the way that we might get it in our heads to do a second version of this.
Oh, cool.
So, because you know what happens when you do it, you think, oh, God, it would have been good to do that one.
Right.
Or you might say, you know, you guys could have done that. And we go, oh, geez. Oh, yeah. And before you know it, you've got a head full of a dozen songs that you... So it could happen again, but I think the album after this one will probably be another originals one, and then maybe another Bonham Bullock. When you were saying about the where we recorded, I just realised that when we finished recording at that Chapel Studios, it's a lovely converted chapel, and when we finished recording there, we took it to Real World Studios, which is owned by Peter Gabriel.
Oh, okay.
You heard of that place?
Yeah, I think I know that guy, Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
We used to have coffee.
Famous big...
No, he's been around a while. That's awesome. That's all.
Yeah, so we mixed it up there with Tim Oliver, who mixed Robert Plant's albums and some of Peter Gabriel's albums and stuff. So that was it's a pretty, and he mastered the album as well. So the mixing and the mastering was really pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've been listening to the songs and they're awesome. I mean, you know, I think y'all did a great job of the songs, and then, you know, everybody will get a kick out of it. That's going to be released April 29th. And then you were talking about some concerts that you got coming up, but you're not sure about the U.S. yet. You got to come to Alabama, though. That's
God, I'd love to come to Alabama.
Yeah, that's got to be on the list, and we've got to jam. Yeah, we got to jam somewhere.
You know, there's at least three bands. Well, there's Skynyrd, there's the Alabama Three, there's the Blind Boys of Alabama. There's so much of Alabama that.
Right. Yeah, well, there's the Muscle Shoals sound, you know, up there.
The Muscle Shoals.
Yeah.
Yeah, Muscle Shoals, and then never mind the music. Do you guys do ribs and chicken wings?
Hey, sure. Hey, just be here at. I'll be cooking them. Y'all just show up.
You'll be cooking them. Brilliant, fantastic.
Just randomly call me before you show up. You know, just say, hey, we're coming in. Bring out the chicken wings. Thanks so much for talking to me, and I'll be hearing from you hopefully soon.
Chicken ribs and a jam, Alabama.
Put it on your calendar. Yeah,
it's on.
Okay. All right, sounds good to me.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
Bye.